This YouTube video was produced with the assistance of artificial intelligence. Specifically, the visuals were generated using ChatGPT, the script was composed using Claude AI, and the narration was synthesized using Edge-TTS. Nonetheless. Definition. Despite what has just been said or considered, in spite of that fact, used to introduce a contrasting point that remains true. Collocation. But nonetheless important, nonetheless true, nonetheless remain, nonetheless significant. Synonym. Nevertheless, however, yet, still. Example. The project faced numerous delays. Nonetheless, the team managed to deliver the final product on time. The evidence was circumstantial, but nonetheless played a significant role in shaping the jury's decision. The initial investment was considerable. Nonetheless, the long-term returns more than justified the expense. Barrier. Definition. An obstacle, restriction, or difficulty that prevents movement, access, or progress, something that separates or blocks. Collocation. Language barrier, trade barrier, barrier to entry, overcome a barrier, remove barriers. Synonym. Obstacle, hindrance, impediment, hurdle. Example. Language barriers remain one of the most common challenges for international students studying abroad. The government pledged to remove regulatory barriers that discourage small businesses from entering the market. Lack of affordable childcare continues to be a significant barrier to workforce participation for many parents. Controversial. Definition. Giving rise to public disagreement, debate, or opposing opinions, likely to provoke strong reactions from different groups. Collocation. Controversial decision, controversial topic, highly controversial, controversial issue, controversial figure. Synonym. Contentious, divisive, debatable, disputed. Example. The government's controversial decision to raise the retirement age sparked widespread protests across the country. Climate policy remains a highly controversial topic in many political discussions around the world. The controversial figure attracted both fierce criticism and passionate support from the general public. Introduction. Definition. The act of bringing something into use, existence, or practice for the first time also refers to the opening section of a speech, book, or presentation. Collocation. Introduction of new technology, brief introduction, introduction to a subject, formal introduction, introduction of a policy. Synonym. Launch, beginning, opening, presentation. Example. The introduction of automated systems significantly improved efficiency across the manufacturing sector. The professor began the lecture with a brief introduction to the fundamental principles of macroeconomics. Since the introduction of the new employee wellness policy, absenteeism has decreased by 20%. Disturb. Definition. To interrupt or interfere with someone's peace, concentration, or normal state, to cause anxiety, worry, or unease. Collocation. Disturb the peace, deeply disturbing, disturb sleep, do not disturb, disturb the balance. Synonym. Disrupt, unsettle, bother, agitate. Example. Construction noise from the neighboring site continued to disturb residents throughout the early morning hours. The findings of the internal audit were deeply disturbing and prompted an immediate organizational review. Scientists warned that excessive deforestation could disturb the natural balance of the entire ecosystem. Outbreak. Definition. A sudden and widespread occurrence of something undesirable, especially a disease, conflict, or violence. Collocation. Outbreak of disease, outbreak of violence, disease outbreak, outbreak of war, contain an outbreak. Synonym. Eruption, surge, onset, occurrence. Example. Health authorities responded swiftly to contain the outbreak of the infectious disease before it spread further. The outbreak of violence in the region forced thousands of families to flee their homes. Improved sanitation and hygiene practices are essential for preventing future outbreaks of waterborne diseases. Imagine. Definition. To form a mental picture or concept of something that is not present or has not yet happened, to suppose or assume something as a possibility. Collocation. Imagine a world, hard to imagine. Imagine the possibility. Imagine a scenario. Imagine a future. Synonym. Envision, visualize, conceive, picture. Example. It is hard to imagine modern daily life without the convenience of smartphones and internet access. The architect asked the client to imagine a workspace that promotes both creativity and collaboration. Researchers encourage students to imagine innovative solutions rather than relying solely on conventional approaches. Parallel. Definition. Occurring or existing at the same time or in a similar way, also refers to a comparison between two things that share notable similarities. Collocation. Draw a parallel, run parallel, parallel to, parallel development, parallel structure. Synonym. Similar, comparable, corresponding, equivalent. Example. Historians often draw parallels between the current economic situation and the financial crisis of the early 20th century. The two countries experienced parallel developments in industrialization despite having very different political systems. A new railway line will run parallel to the existing highway to reduce congestion in the metropolitan area. Restore. Definition. To bring something back to its original condition, position, or state, to re-establish something that was lost or diminished. Collocation. Restore confidence, restore order, restore a building, restore peace, fully restored. Synonym. Repair, renew, revive, re-establish. Example. The government took decisive action to restore public confidence in the financial system after the banking crisis. Skilled craftspeople were hired to restore the historic cathedral to its former architectural glory. International peacekeepers were deployed to the region with the mission of restoring stability and order. Meticulous. Definition. Showing extreme care and attention to every detail, very thorough, precise, and accurate in one's work or approach. Collocation. Meticulous attention, meticulous planning, meticulous research, meticulous detail, meticulous work. Synonym. Thorough, precise, careful, painstaking. Example. The success of the product launch was largely attributed to the team's meticulous planning over several months. Her meticulous attention to detail ensured that every section of the financial report was accurate and complete. The restoration of the ancient manuscript required meticulous work by a team of highly trained specialists. Absolute. Definition. Complete and total, with no restriction, exception, or qualification, not relative or dependent on anything else. Collocation. Absolute power, absolute certainty, absolute necessity, absolute majority, absolute truth. Synonym. Total, complete, utter, unconditional. Example. The board granted the new director absolute authority over all operational decisions within the division. There is no absolute certainty in scientific research, as new evidence can always challenge existing theories. Maintaining data security has become an absolute necessity for organizations operating in the digital economy. Dichotomy. Definition. A division or contrast between two things that are presented as entirely different or opposed to each other. Collocation. False dichotomy, dichotomy between, sharp dichotomy, created dichotomy, apparent dichotomy. Synonym. Division, contrast, split, separation. Example. The dichotomy between economic growth and environmental protection has long been debated among policymakers. Critics argue that presenting the issue as a choice between freedom and security creates a false dichotomy. There is an apparent dichotomy between the company's public statements and its actual business practices. Imperative. Definition. Of vital importance and absolutely necessary, requiring urgent attention or action, also refers to a command or essential duty. Collocation. Moral imperative, imperative that, absolutely imperative, strategic imperative, imperative to act. Synonym. Essential, crucial, vital, urgent. Example. It is absolutely imperative that all safety protocols are followed during the handling of hazardous materials. Addressing the growing skills gap has become a strategic imperative for the technology industry. Many world leaders consider the fight against climate change to be a moral imperative of our time. Exaggerate. Definition: to represent something as being larger, better, worse, or more important than it actually is, to overstate the truth. Collocation: greatly exaggerated, exaggerate the importance, tend to exaggerate, exaggerate the risk, exaggerate claims. Synonym: overstate, inflate, magnify, embellish. Example: media reports sometimes exaggerate the severity of economic downturns, which can increase public anxiety. It would be difficult to exaggerate the importance of early childhood education in shaping long-term development. The spokesperson was accused of exaggerating the company's achievements to attract potential investors. Initial. Definition: occurring at the beginning or first stage of a process, event, or period, relating to the earliest phase of something. Collocation: initial phase, initial reaction, initial investment, initial assessment, initial response. Synonym: first, early, opening, preliminary. Example: the initial phase of the project focused on conducting thorough market research and feasibility studies. Despite an initial investment of several $1 million, the venture became profitable within 3 years. The client's initial response to the proposal was cautious, but further discussions led to full approval. Isolate. Definition: to separate something or someone from others, to identify and examine something individually by removing it from its surrounding context. Collocation: isolate a problem, isolate a variable, socially isolated, isolate the cause, isolate from. Synonym: separate, detach, segregate, quarantine. Example: the engineering team worked to isolate the source of the malfunction before attempting any repairs. Elderly residents living alone are particularly vulnerable to becoming socially isolated from their communities. Researchers were able to isolate a specific compound that showed promising results in early-stage clinical trials. Intense. Definition: existing in a very high degree of strength, concentration, or force, extremely serious, focused, or emotionally powerful. Collocation: intense pressure, intense competition, intense heat, intense debate, intense training. Synonym: extreme, fierce, severe, powerful. Example: the athletes underwent intense training for 6 months in preparation for the international championship. Intense competition among technology companies has driven rapid innovation in the consumer electronics market. The proposal sparked an intense debate among board members over the allocation of limited resources. Rehabilitate. Definition: to restore someone or something to a normal, healthy, or functional state through treatment, training, or repair, to reestablish a positive reputation. Collocation: rehabilitate patients, rehabilitate offenders, rehabilitate a building, rehabilitation program, fully rehabilitate. Synonym: restore, recover, reform, rebuild. Example: the physical therapy program was specifically designed to rehabilitate patients recovering from serious sports injuries. The government invested heavily in programs aimed at rehabilitating young offenders and reintegrating them into society. Efforts to rehabilitate the abandoned industrial district have transformed it into a thriving cultural and commercial hub. Lose. Definition: to be deprived of something one previously had, to fail to win or maintain something, to become unable to find or keep something. Collocation: lose confidence, lose control, lose sight of, lose an opportunity, lose ground. Synonym: forfeit, miss, misplace, surrender. Example: companies that fail to innovate risk losing their competitive advantage in an increasingly dynamic market. The organization must not lose sight of its core mission while pursuing rapid expansion into new territories. Investors began to lose confidence in the firm after 2 consecutive quarters of declining revenue. Progress. Definition: forward movement or development toward a destination or a more advanced or improved condition, advancement over time. Collocation, make progress, significant progress, progress toward, slow progress, monitor progress. Synonym, advancement, development, improvement, headway. Example, the research team has made significant progress toward developing a more effective treatment for the disease. Regular meetings are held to monitor progress and address any challenges that arise during the project. Despite slow progress in the initial stages, the reform initiative eventually achieved its key objectives.